It's a sort of bizarre feeling to, pick up a guitar and know like this is what I do and this is what I've done for most of my life, and I never take it for granted. The first music I got Men at Work, Business as Usual cassette for Christmas. Because it was the 80s and saxophone was so important, I was like, man, I need to be a sax player. Like, sax is where it's at. Like if I could be a sax player, and I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. So really sax is what, even though it's ridiculous to think back now, but that was like my dream. Luckily, most people have the story of just getting the Kmart guitar or, having a succession of bad guitars till they get the one they save up. Luckily, my dad had pretty much this guitar, a Les Paul Studio in Oxblood. I don't know if it was the same finish, but it was very similar. And he gave it to me. I had coveted this guitar, because it was his, and I didn't really get to play unless I snuck in and played it, which I did sometimes. So this guitar was kind of this legendary thing that I knew of its existence, and I got to see it and just dream about owning it. And when he gave it to me, which was very unexpected, all of a sudden now, not only did I have my first guitar, I had that guitar that I had been coveting, and I had a Les Paul Studio. It was a beautiful guitar. Maybe a little before I got my guitar was when Appetite for Destruction came out. So I saw Slash playing a Les Paul, so I didn't know anything about guitars at all. I didn't know a Gibson from anything other than knowing this guitar, but I saw he played the same guitar. No matter who you were, you listen to punk, you listen to metal, you listen to hip hop, everyone loved Appetite for Destruction. So that was a way that I was able to connect myself to this guitar. What I'm holding here is the new Les Paul Studio. There's a great continuity with this guitar because this feels like my first guitar. It's not like, whoa, this is like a bizarre version of that guitar. This feels like I'm holding that guitar that I first held in 1989. These are kind of a middle ground where they're light enough that I can fling around on stage and not, break my neck. And it's just such a great all-around live guitar for me. My sort of people that influenced me or that I appreciated were, like Dr. No from Bad Brains. People that had weird guitar styles like Philo Kramer from Fear. Greg Ginn obviously has a very strange jazz, insane guitar style. And East Bay Ray from the Dead Kennedys, he had a weird like surf jazz thing that he brought into punk. So that kind of stuff stuck out to me. Like I say, I was never obsessed with guitar god type of people. So like when I started playing, I didn't think about tone or technique really. It was like play fast, play loud, play aggressively, throw your guitar around, go crazy. My tone was dictated by whatever amp I could afford, and I started with crappy amps and they got better and better. But the one common denominator was I had this studio. And so no matter how crappy my amp was and my setup, how like torn up my cables were or whatever it may be, I had a guitar. I had one piece of the chain that was undeniable. In AFI and even before that, I was the only guitar player, so I had to fill up the music. But I like playing leads and I like playing, little licks and stuff. So I would often, rather than using one string or noodling or, soloing, I would play a lot of my leads on 2 or 3 strings. So I would try to make it sound like still full, like the music, like it didn't drop out when I was playing a lead. So that's a style. I developed this technique of playing leads that was often multiple strings. And I was always playing major bar chords. Like I never played power chords. I was always using all the strings as much as possible. Even when I was playing like open stuff, I was always trying to use all the strings. So that's another thing that I still do to this day. I'm never going like, I've been in AFI for 20 years, almost exactly. And I joined the band in 1998. When I joined the band, I was the songwriter because the guy that I replaced was the songwriter. So every time Davey and I sit down to write a new record, it's just whatever comes out. We were both doing this, and when we got together, we went like that. Like there's this weird synergy between the two of us that is why it worked, I guess. The day he asked me to join the band, we started writing Black Sails in the Sunset, which is the first record that, I wrote most of the music on. And, that was a very kind of dark, aggressive, hardcore meets punk meets other things that we were bringing, this kind of dark thing that we were bringing into it. Yeah, we never had any conscious decisions to what the sound of each record was going to be. But if you know AFI, each record is different. It doesn't sound like the last one. And so there is an arc to what our sound has become, but it wasn't ever planned, and it never will be planned, and so. When I plugged this guitar in today, picking it for the first time, like I say, I'm plugging into an unfamiliar setup. It's not my amp, but it just has this familiarity to it immediately, and that continuity that I know I can plug this guitar in to anything, any amp, and it's gonna have a beautiful tone, which it does, which it had when I plugged in, that creamy yet mid-rangey tone that I expect from this guitar that I'm so familiar with. The neck just makes sense to me, and I played a lot of different guitars, a lot of different necks, but something about the profile of this neck fits my hand. And because it was the first guitar I ever had, it feels like how the neck of a guitar should be. Very few people get to do what we do as musicians and guitar players, and this guitar is an intrinsic part of that. Without this guitar, without having been given this guitar as a kid, I wouldn't be sitting here, obviously, and I wouldn't have this career because that set me on the path. The sound you get from this defines what I start out and continue to be as a guitar player. It made me feel some type of way today because this is definitely taking me back and giving me that feeling of seeing this guitar before I owned it and be like, oh, the Les Paul Studio, someday, and now, today is that day.